With the Venmo debit card, you can turn the spa day that your friends paid you back for
into concert tickets that you can earn up to 5% cash back on.
Where a spa day with the girls becomes concert tickets. Visit venmo.me/debit to learn more. The Venmo MasterCard is issued by the Bancorp Bank N.A. pursuant to license by MasterCard International Incorporated. Terms apply. Dosh cashback terms apply.
Your data is like gold to hackers, and they'll sell it to the highest bidder. Are you protected? McAfee helps shield you, blocking suspicious texts, malicious emails, and fraudulent websites. McAfee Secure VPN lets you browse safely, and its AI-powered text scam detector spots threats instantly. You'll also get up to $2 million of award-winning antivirus and identity theft protection, all for just $39.99 for your first year. Visit McAfee.com. Cancel anytime. Terms apply.
I want to tell you the story of what happened last week as President Trump was issuing his long-awaited executive order to dismantle the Department of Education. But before I do that, I need to tell you more about what the Department of Education does. Because yes, it provides money to local school districts. It spends billions of dollars on special education. But more than anything else, the Department of Education operates a little like a bank.
A huge function of the Department of Education is running federal financial aid, right?
Danielle Douglas-Gabriel is a higher education reporter at The Washington Post.
I mean, if you were to think about the student loan portfolio relative to big banks, right, and the kind of assets they have, the Federal Student Aid Office would have the largest bank, effectively, with a fraction of the staff of a Wells Fargo or a Chase to manage it.
More than 40 million Americans are customers of the Department of Education's bank. They rely on it. And last week was not going so great at the DOE, even before the president's order. Like a lot of federal offices, the place was emptying out.
So right now you have half the 4,000 or so people who were at the department left, right? So it is dramatically shrunk as a result of the work that DOGE has been doing over the last few months.
And then on Wednesday of last week, I heard that the FAFSA website was going down. This is the student aid form that people fill out in order to get student loans, right?
Yes, so it was intermittently down and up and all that for about 4 hours. And while, the department will officially say, well, it's because of the contractors, the vendors that we work, they were having some problems that predate this issue. Well, a part of the reduction in force was the elimination of a tech team that managed those vendors, right? And I actually spoke to a couple of people who were on that tech team who got fired, and they were like, yeah, this is what we normally be doing, but we're locked out of our system and we can't help, so this is what happens.
Then it was Thursday.
In a few moments, I will sign an executive order to begin eliminating the Federal Department of Education once and for all.
Surrounded by children at school desks, President Trump announced his intention to feed even more of the Department of Education into the wood chipper, as Elon Musk might say.
And it sounds strange, doesn't it? Department of Education, we're going to eliminate it. And everybody knows it's right. And the Democrats know it's right. And I hope they're going to be voting for it because ultimately it may come before them. But everybody knows it's right. And we have to get our children.
In these remarks, Trump himself seems to acknowledge that technically he can't get rid of this agency unilaterally. But he sure is trying. So you can starve it, but you can't fully get rid of it.
Exactly.
But basically, President Trump was like, FYI, we're going to be starving this department. And yes, it's the department that administers a whole lot of loans for people.
Yeah. The back and forth is really uncomfortable because it's hard to be certain where your loans will be coming from, how you will repay it and whether there will be kind of a smooth process for either getting the loans or repaying them. And I can understand if people feel a lot of anxiety around that.
Today on the show, the Department of Education is being hollowed out. What does that mean for your student loans? I'm Mary Harris. You're listening to What Next? Stick around. This episode is brought to you by Saks Fifth Avenue. Shopping at Saks is a great way to discover the best new styles and elevate your everyday look, especially when you're short on time. The great thing about Saks.com is that it is always open 24 hours a day, which means you can browse from the comfort of your own home. Saks makes it really easy to find your favorite brands, and they offer amazing style inspiration. I'm not exaggerating when I say my jaw dropped at the shearling leather biker jacket I found. And that's not even mentioning the Alice and Olivia sequined mini dress I had my eye on. Whether you're refreshing your entire wardrobe or shopping for a vacation, Saks makes it fun and easy. So if you're looking for a fun, effortless shopping experience and you want to elevate your personal style, head on over to Saks. That's Saks.com for everyday inspiration. This episode is brought to you by Saks Fifth Avenue. Shopping at Saks is a great way to discover the best new styles and elevate your everyday look, especially when you're short on time. The great thing about Saks.com is that it is always open 24 hours a day, which means you can browse from the comfort of your own home. Saks makes it really easy to find your favorite brands, and they offer amazing style inspiration. I'm not exaggerating when I say my jaw dropped at the shearling leather biker jacket I found. And that's not even mentioning the Alice and Olivia sequined mini dress I had my eye on. Whether you're refreshing your entire wardrobe or shopping for a vacation, Saks makes it fun and easy. So if you're looking for a fun, effortless shopping experience and you want to elevate your personal style, head on over to Saks. That's Saks.com for everyday inspiration. So before we get into all the ways federal chaos is interfering with the student loan system, we should acknowledge the student loan system in this country was pretty messy already. When Joe Biden was in office, he tried all kinds of things to fix that. Student loan forgiveness got struck down by the Supreme Court. Ultimately, he took a more piecemeal approach, creating the SAVE plan, which limited monthly costs and promised to forgive loans eventually. But that, too, got put on hold by a judge. Enter Donald Trump. Danielle Douglas-Gabriel says, after last week's executive order, the president announced the Department of Education wouldn't even oversee student loans anymore, in theory.
Theoretically, and I think that's the appropriate word, the president would like to move student loans to the Small Business Administration.
I do want to say that I've decided that the SBA, the Small Business Administration, headed by Kelly Loeffler, is a terrific person, will handle all of the student loan portfolio. We have a portfolio that's very large.
Again, to do that, he would need 60 votes in Congress to legally do that, because there is a statute that explicitly says the federal student aid office must be the one to administer student loans. And the president hasn't said he's moving FSA. Even if he is, he still needs Congress to do that. So if he were to try to unilaterally move the student loan program over there, it will likely face legal challenges. But you could still see the president try to do that. Here's the thing. The Small Business Administration, much like other agencies within the federal space, has been going through massive layoffs. So there's a question as to whether they have the capacity to take on a $1.6 trillion loan portfolio with 40 million or so borrowers.
So it sounds like there are a lot of questions about what will happen moving forward. But maybe we should focus a little bit, too, on what's actually happening on the ground, because there are all of these indicators that people who are repaying their student loans now are seeing these troubling signals that things are changing and they're not getting a lot of warning about them. Part of that is because President Biden had tried to lower student loan repayments in a bunch of ways, and what he was trying to do there got caught up in court And then that allowed the Trump administration to make different kinds of decisions. So just lay out where we are for student borrowers right now.
So the lawsuit that you were alluding to over the SAVE plan has kind of created this cascading effect throughout the entire federal student loan system. Because of the way the courts viewed this particular case, they, created questions about whether student loan forgiveness was legal at all under the statute that SAVE was created through. And that statute created other income-driven repayment plans. So now here's where borrowers stand. If you are someone, right, who has borrowed, say, $50,000, $60,000 and really can't afford to pay that amount back on a standard 10-year plan, right, then these kind of income-driven repayment plans offer you a lower monthly payment because it's based on your disposable income, so a percentage of your earnings. Right now, you can't access those programs. If you are someone who needs to submit a form to say, hey, this is how much I make so I can stay in this program, this income-driven repayment plan, you can't do that either because the department is not allowing student loan servicers to process any of those applications.
I want to just underline how you explain this because it clarified something for me. What I think I understand from how you've laid this all out is that this court decision, what it did is it froze Biden's plan, which was sort of a specific income-based repayment plan for something like 8 million people. But then it threw into question all these other income-based repayment plans that had been going on for a long time before Biden. And so there were all of these streams that all of a sudden were under a lot more scrutiny.
Yes, indeed. That is the big issue here. And I think for borrowers I've spoken to in the last couple of months, they're just kind of worried. Does this mean that all income-driven repayment plans go away? There are 4 of them, and one of them was not at all included in this injunction. But because there's one application for all 4, the application had to be pulled down, and so they were all affected. Still, there are a lot of people who are like, I cannot afford these payments if these plans go away. One woman I spoke to who has been paying on her loans for, 20 years at this point, has been in income-based repayment, right? This woman told me, if I lose this plan, right, my monthly payments are $350 right now, they would go up to $2,000. That is a mortgage.
Wow. And in fact, a lawyer in Texas has sued the Department of Education for suddenly raising her monthly loan payments by $2,000, basically because she can't submit the application saying, hi, I need to have my payment lowered.
Yeah. This is what is going to happen. So, the standard 10-year plan is the default. So when you can't access income-driven repayment plans, you go to the default. And that 10-year plan for a lot of people is really expensive. Now, what a lot of legal analysts and student advocates have been suggesting is that if you find yourself in this situation, ask your loan servicer for what's known as hardship forbearance, or just for forbearance anyway. It would postpone your payments while the situation is being sorted out. And in talking to a lot of student loan servicers, they've seen a huge spike in people requesting this help because they can't afford it.
At the same time that this income-based repayment situation is happening, something else is going on, which is folks who work in the public sector and nonprofits who used to be eligible for loan forgiveness, they're having trouble accessing that, right? Or the rules have changed. Can you just tell me more?
So there are 2 things happening. Certainly a lot of the federal workers who have been laid off or fired as a result of the activities of DOJ, they're losing access to the public service jobs that would qualify them for public service loan forgiveness. Now, it's entirely possible those people are to find jobs for state governments or other agencies or other qualifying nonprofits, and they'll be fine. But, given the flood of people that are now looking for employment, it will probably be difficult. So that's one. And then on the other side, a few weeks ago, the Trump administration said that they want to limit eligibility for public service loan forgiveness and strip it away from certain nonprofit groups. Again, this is something that can't easily be done, but there are a lot of public servants who aren't touched by that, who are just still generally really anxious because of the uncertainty of, well, is this just the beginning of trying to change qualifying employment? Or will you try to strip out other industries from being able to qualify for this program?
It's interesting. As I talk to you, I'm getting a sense that so much of what's being proposed here when it comes to student loans is going to take a long time to sort out. Some of it may not be legal, but the overall impact is a ton of anxiety and fear. And frankly, a lot of people may just say like, oh, I guess I don't qualify for X, Y, or Z anymore, and just not apply for, say, loan forgiveness. And maybe that's part of the point.
I mean, certainly that could be a part of the point, but I would tell anyone who right now is feeling this kind of anxiety, there are things you can do to at least, shore up your end of what's happening. One, go on studentaid.gov, download all of your files so that you can have a paper trail of all your payments. If you are somebody who may qualify for public service loan forgiveness right now, submit that certification form from your employer saying that, yes, I work for someone who qualifies as a employer under this program. Make that effort to do that right now, right? So at least that you start having a paper trail.
Because time may be running out.
Well, I wouldn't say time may be running out because we have not seen definitive changes in the program at this stage. And I don't want people to start freaking out because of things that are being said in the news. You need actual processes and procedures to get this stuff done. And nobody's actually made an effort to do it yet. But it doesn't hurt to have a paper trail with your payments and everything kind of all your T's crossed and all your I's dotted. So in case we get to a point where there is an effort to really change this program, you can say, hey, I qualified at this stage. And perhaps that gives you stronger legal ground to make sure that you can get student loan forgiveness.
After the break, how the Trump administration's handling of student loans could mean a return to a system that did not work for most people.
I can say to my new Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra, hey, find a keto-friendly restaurant nearby and text it to Beth and Steve. And it does without me lifting a finger, so I can get in more squats anywhere I can. 1, 2, 3.
Will that be cash or credit?
Credit. 4.
Galaxy S25 Ultra, the AI companion that does the heavy lifting so you can do you. Get yours at Samsung.com. Compatible with select apps. Requires Google Gemini account. Results may vary based on input. Check responses for accuracy.
Pro Savings Days are back at Lowe's with limited time savings on the supplies pros need. Get up to 40% off select major appliances. Plus, save an additional $100 on every $1,000 you spend on select major appliances. And don't miss your chance to activate and earn 3 times the points on select DeWalt and Klein tools. Lowe's, we help, you save. Valid through 3/28. Selection varies by location. While supplies last. See associate or Lowe's.com for more details on qualifying items.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Here's something I wonder about a lot. I'm not sure anyone would say that our student loan system in the U.S. is great. It functions, but it's complicated. School's expensive. Is there any argument that the things that are happening now at the Department of Education around student loans could be beneficial long term?
None that come to mind. I mean, here's the thing. The student loan program was created to afford more access to a college education for people who don't readily have the money to pay for it, right? Perhaps, and this is debatable, that there is an over-reliance on debt financing for college, and states and schools should step up and do more to make sure that students don't have to borrow. And you have seen a fairly consistent trend over the last decade or so of states and schools starting to step up in terms of institutional grants and scholarships, state grants and scholarship money going towards education. And as a result, you actually have seen less undergraduate borrowing. So something is working on that end. Student loans still can be a very useful part of being able to pay for college if done strategically. Things like don't borrow more than you expect to make your first year out of college. Those sorts of rules tend to help folks to stay in a space where they can afford to pay back their debt. But the reality is the system does need some significant changes and overhauls to assure that people aren't saddled with debt that's unpayable. And that could be making sure schools are held to account for the sorts of programs that they produce, and making sure that, students perhaps, and this is also debatable, aren't allowed to borrow up to the full cost of attendance for graduate programs. There are some common sense kind of changes that certainly should be considered and put into place, but wholesale scrapping the system will likely mean a lot less access for people who have fewer resources, financial resources to afford college.
Are there working theories about an end goal here for the Trump administration? I've seen wilder ones, like folks speculating, I should say, that crashing the federal student loan program would make it easier to privatize a lot of lending when it comes to higher education. I don't know what you've heard in terms of bigger theories of whether any of these cuts make some kind of sense.
I mean, certainly the president was far clearer in his vision the first term that the federal government should play far less of a role in education lending, and it should go back to private lenders who used to play a much larger role in education financing. We haven't heard that explicitly from him this time around, but certainly the actions would suggest, not just from him, but from the Republican Party broadly, would suggest that that is the ultimate goal. And when I say the Republican Party broadly, I mean through the process of reconciliation to extend the tax cuts. Many of the savings that the party is considering would mean huge changes to the federal student loan program, ending Grad Plus, which is the grad side of federal student lending, and ending Parent Plus, which is the loans that parents can take out for their students to attend school. And all of those things would effectively push people back into the private market, where it's not as easy to get a loan, where they'll likely need cosigners, have to have better credit, all of that, and where there also are far fewer consumer protections and student loan forgiveness options, right?
It really changes who gets higher education.
Certainly. I mean, we do run the risk of returning to a time where there are fewer Black and brown people, fewer low-income people who are able to access higher education. That is a possibility. Some of that could be cut off by the fact that, again, states are stepping up their investment in higher education. However, if states' budgets start to dwindle, or their coffers start to dwindle because of some of the other things that the Trump administration is doing, or just budget shortfalls that happen pretty routinely, higher education tends to be the first place they cut in terms of investment, right? No one wants to cut K-12. And so higher ed always becomes the go-to because you can always raise tuition revenue to offset the loss of state appropriations.
So I'm in a really particular place, which is I'm a parent of an older teenager who might be thinking about college next year. And I'm kind of curious what you would tell someone like me, because we've saved a little bit, but we're certainly going to be looking at loans. And a loan is kind of the beginning of a long-term relationship with a financial institution, right? And I look at what's happening with the federal government, and I think, would I start a long-term relationship with this lender? Who am I even getting the money from? You know, what would you say to someone like me?
I mean, a couple of things. Like for all of the people who are having challenges, there are a lot of people who are just paying their loans. It's auto debited right out of their account. They're having no issue at all. And they didn't borrow a lot of money and it's paid off quickly, right? So there is that population of borrowers for whom the federal student loan program has worked the way as it was intended. They got their education and they're thriving. So I don't want to discount that as we're talking about all of the horrible things that are happening right now. At the same time, I think families are becoming a lot more savvy about this big, massive financial decision that is college in terms of shopping around for the best deals in part, right? Schools that are offering good merit aid or need-based aid, state schools that have not only the institutional aid component, but the state grant aid component. We now live in a time where there are 30 states that have some form of tuition-free college, if not at community college level, in some cases also at the four-year college level. That it shouldn't be discounted as people are making the decision about where to go, because that could lower your cost, your all-in cost. And I would also say, again, student loans are not a bad thing. Used wisely, they can be a great way to obtain your education. And that hasn't changed necessarily. It's just, I think the last 5 to 10 years has shown us the need to be strategic with the use of these student loans and to be really thoughtful about, are you going into a profession that will afford you the kind of earnings that you could pay this back quickly or within a reasonable amount of time? Just go into this decision with the same kind of bright-eyed, inquisitive mind that you would if you were buying a house or buying a car. I think sometimes people lead with the emotional side of a college education, and that's great, but it is still a financial decision and has to be treated as such.
Do you think there's going to be a moment when people who hold these loans, who may be feeling jerked around a little bit, do you think there's a moment where they're going to get mad?
Oh, they already have been mad. I mean, that anger is there. It has been there for a while. I think we certainly saw flashes of it during the debates and fights over Biden's plan to offer sweeping debt cancellation. Students were out in the street protesting to ensure that this happened and were completely angry when it did not. So I don't believe that's going away. What will be interesting is to see how that evolves or changes because of what's happening with the Department of Education, what the future of student loans, all of those things. I haven't seen any flashes of protest yet around that, but I wouldn't be surprised if we were to see that soon.
Danielle, I'm really grateful for your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Danielle Douglas-Gabriel is a national higher education reporter for The Washington Post. And that's our show. What Next is produced by Paige Osburn, Elena Schwartz, Rob Gunther, Anna Phillips, Ethan Oberman, and Madeline Ducharme. Ben Richmond is the Senior Director of Podcast Operations here at Slate. And I'm Mary Harris. Go track me down on Blue Sky if you'd like. I'm at Mary Harris. Thanks for listening. Catch you back here next time.